नमस्ते, हमेशा खुश रहो बिटिया. My name is JVN Manisha Singh. Today I am teaching you self-employment need and various mode opens in the food processing and agri sector. Then subject name is food project planning and entrepreneurship. Discipline is food and biotechnology. Need of self-employment. The sizable presence of small-scale industries points to the sector's role in the employment generation. Though the market falls under the unorganized sector in the country, the organized sector has a larger share in the secondary processing segments than the primary one. Rice mills account for the largest share of processing units in the organized sector. In FY16, the organized sector is estimated to account for 70% of India's food processing industries. This is the organized sector has the largest share in the sector, that is the FY16. This is the segment which shows the unorganized sector and small scale industries is almost about 30% and the organized sector is 70%. Then food processing is a key contributor to employment generation in India. The policymakers have identified food processing as a key sector in the encouraging labor movement from agriculture to the manufacturing. By 2024, food processing sector is expected to employ 9 million people in India. This project is expected to generate 8,000 direct and 80,000 indirect jobs in the state. This is the graph which is showing healthy contribution to the employment generation. Then strong fundamental and policy support aiding growth. First is strong domestic demand. That is the rising disposable incomes, growing middle class urbanization and a young population and changing lifestyles and food habits. These all are including in the strong domestic demand. Then rising export opportunities. India's greater integration with the global economy, increasing exports with the advantage of proximity to key export destination, expected spike in global demand as the emerging markets grow at the fast pace. Then supply side advantages, favorable climate for agriculture and a wide variety of crops. Then large livestock based aids dairy and meat processing sector in India. Then inland water bodies, long coastline helps marine products. This is the advantage of the supply side. Then policy support. That is Vision 2015 plan targets tripling of food processing sector, mega food parks, agri-export zones to attract FDI and aid infrastructure. Approval of National Mission on Food Processing. Then rising income and growing middle class to drive demand for processed foods. Rising disposable incomes is strong growth in per capita income has resulted in greater demand for food items. Incomes have increased at a brisk pace in India and would continue rising considering the country's strong economic growth prospects. According to the IMF, nominal per capita income is projected to grow at CAGR of 4.94% over 2010 to 2019, and during 2015 to 2019 per capita income is expected to expand at a CAGR of 8.09%. There has also been a shift in the demand from carbohydrates to the meat products that is in line with the various phases of economic growth and to convenience foods and organic and diet foods. And there is a strong economic growth since the 1990s has led up to the rapid urbanization and a growing middle class families and nuclear families and dual income households, because both the partners are working nowadays. Then coupled with a problem population, coupled with a young population and increasing media penetration, this has led to a surge in demand for packaged food, alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages, snacks, savories, etc. Then This is a girls' university, and I am talking all about regarding to the girls. Firstly, women's resource base needs to be increased. This is an important issue in both South Asia, which includes India, and East Africa. Most women engaged in informal activities in the two regions are characterized by illiteracy, minimum education, low skills, and a lack of basic necessities. Rudimentary support services are required in the form of literacy classes, basic numeracy, health education, and skills training. Female wage earners and individual enterprises, self-employed workers in South Asia and East Africa would benefit considerably from these essential services. Relieving some of women's household burden is important as well. Some NGOs have been experimenting with mobile crash units in urban areas. This type of service would assist women engaged in informal activities outside the home, such as self-employed women operating in the markets or streets and female wage earners in informal factory settings, that is under subcontracting arrangements in South Asia. Then gender segregation has particularly aggravated the issue of women's limited resource base in the Pakistan, Bangladesh and northern India and contributed to high illiteracy and fertility rates. This greatly affects women's access to support services and projects must incorporate women's isolation into their design and implementation. Self-employed women require training in areas such as small business management, bookkeeping, food processing techniques, marketing, and entrepreneurship development. This type of training is especially important in East Africa since the majority of informal sector women in this region are self-employed and operating their own businesses, and to a lesser degree in India. Women would benefit from training focused on upgrading their skills, introducing new technology and possibly new products. The establishment of small business advisory centers to assist female entrepreneurs would also be a positive reinforming forcing activity. The most successful literacy projects in Africa have been combined with income generating activities, thus incorporating the two may be a wise strategy. Female agro-processors in South Africa would also benefit from agricultural extension services to enable them to gain more benefits from cash crop farming and improve subsistence food production. Furthermore, agricultural extension services should not be limited to a rural areas only. There is growing research on the subject of female urban agriculture in Nairobi and Kampala and its potential not only for subsistence use but for the market and trade. Agro support services should also target these women. Overall, women do not require or nor desire very large amount of credit. Credit services must include low transaction costs and interest rates. Simple loan procedures and repayment schedules should reflect income streams from the activity, providing women in the informal sector with information regarding the availability of credit in also needed to increase the awareness. Adopting special measures is required in the areas of South Asia where gender segregation is the norm. In the past, husband and wife teams have been employed in rural areas to deliver credit and extension services while accommodating segregation practices. Ensuring that women are borrowing money from their own objectives and not male relative is another factor that must be considered. Research by Rahman on the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh found up to 60% of Grameen's loans were used by the men and 78% for purposes other than those approved. For example, meeting household needs. He recommended providing smaller loans and closer supervision of their use. The bank has incorporated reforms such as requiring members and to pay interest on the remaining balance of their loans. Note the initial amount and allowing 10-year members to withdraw the initial contribution from the reserve fund. Then increasing women's status in society is a challenging process and mobilizing women into groups or associations is generally considered a critical element for achieving this objective. Mobilizing women is beneficial for a number of reasons: to pool resources, provide mutual support, increase women's bargaining power with traders, suppliers, employers, governments, and advocate for a policy reform at local, national, and international levels. Women's groups, association, organizations, cooperatives, and union afford women's increased visibility and provide a delivery channel for disseminating information, new technologies, and services. There are a number of different ways of women and can be organized. The two general strategies for organizing women, which reflect the present discussion regarding wage workers and self-employed enterprises in the informal sector, are grassroots mobilization and national organization. Firstly, individual enterprise or self-employed workers can be organized into the producer or marketing cooperatives to assist women purchase raw material and equipment, marketing their products, develop linkages with distributors, identify new customers, and foster bargaining power. Educating members regarding the role of cooperatives and organizations, membership responsibilities, and rights is often required. In addition, managerial training is beneficial to enable further expansion, responsiveness to changing circumstances, and sustainability of the organization itself. Caste and social restrictions in India may require membership screening to prevent the poorest of the poor movement in corporations from being marginalized by elite women if the objective of the project is poverty alleviation. Self-employed women market women can more effectively lobby for market space, improved facilities, and less harassment from authorities in groups. Secondly, wage earners can be organized into trade unions or women's association to lobby national governments for labor legislation reform, minimum wages, negotiate better working hours and working conditions. Mobilizing wage earners is particularly critical in South Asia, given the large number of female wage earners and foreign employers involved in the region. Extensive subcontracting arrangements, especially in India, requires that both formal and informal sector women be organized together. In many cases, informal home-based workers and factory workers may have the same employer. For this reason, recent literature suggests that trade unions should be organized based on the location, that is, communities or provinces, rather than factory setting. Women's trades union or association can also be lobby employers to incorporate gender consideration into the selection of production processes and introduction of new technology, as well as provide members with safety nets to reduce the negative impact of job losses caused by restructuring or new production processes. These organizations represent a force which can monitor the activities of foreign employers operating in their country and mitigate the volatile nature of globalization. National organization will increase women's visibility in a country and can facilitate the inclusion of gender issues into trade agreement and national macro planning decisions. Technology is basically a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can relieve women of labor-intensive, time-consuming household burdens and improve the productivity of their business. On the other hand, many female wage earners have lost their jobs when new technology replaced their role in the production process, or they were unable to access new employment opportunities because they lacked the necessary skills to operate new machinery. Regarding technology's positive aspects, women in the informal sectors often employ traditional production and processing techniques and basic equipment that are time consuming and or physically demanding. Example is manual pounding of grains, and the introduction of appropriate technology can overcome some of these factors by reducing women's workload and improving productivity. Time remains a serious constraint facing women. The technology needs of women in both the household and enterprise should be assessed prior to planning, and the technology itself should be inexpensive, small, simple, and preferably manufactured domestically. Sterilization equipment, pots, utensils, cooking stoves, and house handheld grinders are some examples that can benefit self-employed food processors. Other appropriate technologies include fish smokers, dryers, oil processors, solar dryers for fruits and vegetables, and improved beehives. Then next topic is various mode open in the food processing and agri sector. Agriculture dependent jobs, but most new and good jobs are to generated down and up agricultural stream, with the demand for aggregation, storage, processing, logistics, food preparation, restaurants, and other related services becoming increasingly important. Many employment opportunities will emerge off the farm in the larger agri-food systems. Just like Hello Tractor generates high quality job opportunities for tractors owner, drivers, and other providers of financial services, these downstream activities will also open up significant job opportunities. In southern and eastern Africa, they are predicted to absorb about 1/4 of labor released by on farm agriculture over the coming decade. The problem is that for the perspective of employment opportunities, working in the agriculture sector is seen as a luxury, non-profitable occupation that has to be avoided. The farmers generally see it purely as a matter of fate and would like to see their children saved from this fate. At best, they see the farm as a source of mere survival, something that keeps them alive. No profession can grow if this is the perception of most of its practitioners. If agriculture is shown to be profitable, the cream of youth will want to get into it. Unless agriculture becomes an industry, it will not be profitable. The industrial culture must come to the agricultural practice. This industrial culture consists of having clear specifications for the inputs and the process and the outputs. There must be a financial discipline and most important cost consciousness, planning and rational decision making, and finally an awareness of performance indices. One must compare one's performance with industry standards and strive to better them. In my opinion, the performance indices, the accounts, including the stock and inventory, the profit and loss, these are all essential data components. Without them, it is not possible to ascertain the performance of the agriculture business. Yet we ignore the lack of this basic facility. For instance, there is no conventional method or practice for weighing the fodder, which otherwise is an important part of the industry. It is an equally important part of agriculture, but the facilities are lacking on every farm, and it is a prerequisite in the development of agriculture sector. The structural transition from agricultural to non-agricultural sector has seen a rapid decline in the contribution of farm sector to the GDP, having reduced to 16%, but a very slow decline in the workforce participation level, which stands to 48%. This has resulted in a low level of productivity in the agriculture sector. The nature of jobs created is informal, and the status of employment is self-employed. Further, there is a high degree of unemployment among the youth due to the aspirational mismatch or skill mismatch, declining participation of females in the labor force, and an economic environment wherein jobs created are not commensurate with economic growth. The distribution of the workforce by sector and status employment shows that in the agriculture sector, where almost 32% are self-employed and majority is operating as own account worker or unpaid helper, and casual labor is in agriculture is just 17%. In India, 70% of the labor force resides in rural areas and depends on low productive agricultural activities, where there is a huge underemployment leading to the low level of productivity. The high proportion of poverty stricken women living in India is due to their high concentration in low productivity work. There is a need to include subjects introducing school students to the agriculture sector in the curriculum for secondary education so that the youth are at least aware of working opportunities in this sector. In the rural settings, efforts are being made through Manrega to coordinate training provision with priorities set for rural development and to promote such non-farm rural activities which help in generating rural income and manage distress arising out of the seasonal fluctuations in the agricultural sector, and also improved production practices through use of new technologies, alternative crops and labor intensive crops can have positive income and employment effect in small land holdings. Similarly, if we talk about disguised unemployment, it exists in a majority of rural households engaged in agriculture. Disguised unemployment exists where part of the labor force is either left without work or is working in a redundant manner where worker productivity is essentially zero, and it is unemployment that does not affect aggregate output. An economy demonstrates disguised unemployment when productivity is low and too many workers are filling too few jobs. Such labor force should be convinced to move from direct labor to the ancillary activities like food processing. Even the Indian government has started to give more importance to the allied activities of agriculture. The following are certain relevant points from a notifications issued by the Reserve Bank of India and revised guidelines. Hope you all are satisfied with this session. This session is powered by Digital Version 2.0 Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University, Jaipur. If you have any query, please mention in a comment box and I will resolve them whenever we have a live session. And with you, thank you very much for watching this video.